to the Equal Podcast. I'm Tristan.
And I'm Madison.
And we're talking to Nikki and Alexander, a couple of writer, director, producers in their production company, Eternals.
Yeah, this is a fun one to interview with them.
If anyone's interested in producing, this has a lot of good tips and also just a great story between the two of them and how they met. And stick around after for a short recap of what we've been watching and enjoy the podcast. There we go. Nikki and Alexander, welcome to the Equal Podcast.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Now, how did the two of you originally meet?
Well, it's kind of a funny story.
It is a funny story. You want to tell us?
I moved here. I'm originally from Philadelphia, but I went to college in Arizona. I moved here from college and started working here. And well, I shot a model that I met on Instagram. And I guess she told Nikki who I was.
I'm from New York. I grew up in South Florida, and then I moved out here just before the pandemic, I know. And there was a model that I would body paint often back in Miami. She had worked with him coming out here for just kind of like a model trip and whatnot, told me about him. And so I slid into your DMs.
She did slide.
Not like that, but
it works together.
Strictly business.
Yeah, she had pretty much said, "Hey, I worked with this artist out in LA, and I think you both would really match well creatively." Was essentially the pitch.
So we met at a bar in downtown LA called Hank's. It's in the Stillwell Hotel. It's a total like POS bar, but it's amazing. Before the pandemic, they'd have like little warming trays of like the cheapest store-bought pizza you could get just stacked.
It's pretty good.
But like we hit it off instantly. We had so much in common, and we started working together with some amount of frequency. And this was like 5 or 6 years ago now. Yeah. And then fast forward, we met back up 2 years ago and like started dating. Yeah. And in that time, kind of realigned our career goals and started working together on the directing side and making things together.
Yeah. We're also, we share a birthday. We're both Capricorns.
Which is tomorrow.
Yeah. Wow. Happy early birthday.
Thanks. So very much our friendship started on a working relationship. And then, well, I found out from you two that we both kind of had we had feelings about each other, but kind of like Capricorn brain was to not, you don't mix business and pleasure. That's not what you do. And then, yeah, I mean, life is short. So years later.
Perpetual line crossers. That might be our issue.
Is that our issue?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I think it worked out well in this situation, but
it's good.
But yeah, so a working friendship that kind of festered into love that then we started our own company.
And a business.
Yeah.
And a working relationship. Did you both connect on movies, TV, things you guys liked growing up?
So this sounds cookie cutter. Everything. So I started off as like a music major and like I did musical theater and I grew up like a scene kid. So we definitely connected on music, on art, on movies. It was scary a lot of the time because it's sometimes like looking into a mirror, but not in the way that like you don't look in the mirror and want to date yourself. But you as far as creatively for me, I had always found a disconnect, especially, in more of like directing roles and that too. It's hard to find people that perfectly align with your vision. And when Alex and I first started really just even like brainstorming for like shoots and films and that together, it was just like instant click. Easy.
It was funny. We had so many films, music, we had so many of those things in common that spanned genres too. Like not just one genre. It was like, oh, I really love Casablanca. Yeah. Oh my God, me too. Like from 100 years of film and music history, so many things in common that I started getting really sketched that she was going to start thinking I was just agreeing with her on everything or like trying to butter myself up. But it was like, oh, you like that? Same. Oh my God. But like, how many times can you say that before the other person's like, is this for real?
Yeah.
But it was all for real, and we share so many of those things in common now. And when we watch films, we have like really good intellectual discourse on them. I feel like
3 of the same tattoos before we even knew each other. It's freaking weird.
It's weird.
It's weird, but it's a good weird for sure.
We love the synchronicity. That's really cool.
Yeah. Little serendipitous there.
Yeah.
It's hell serendipitous.
We love that.
How did you both get involved in film and TV before meeting each other? You doing some photography, theater? Had you done short films before you met?
I did my first short film when I was like 18, 19 in Philadelphia. I'd already always had an interest in doing film. So I ended up going to film school, and obviously in film school, I produced a bunch of drivel that I thought was super intellectual stuff. And, got out and started doing a lot more still photography, but still did music video. I directed music videos during that time, and then started really taking short film and like narrative film very seriously in the last couple of years.
Yeah, for me, there's not a huge creative scene in South Florida. There was great music at the time that I was there, but Florida. So I kind of started off, was a theater major, kind of moved from that. I wanted to do more so like creative directing, and I did a lot of like special effects makeup and body painting. So I would do a lot of still shoots for like editorial magazines and such, where I would kind of, creatively direct everything, do the body painting, etc., and just kind of made a little tribe down there, and then made my move out here. So I did some short films in like the South Florida, Miami area, but like a couple like small horror shorts. But I kind of knew from that too that I really wanted to do the big picture. So
if you have like a background in like music videos, how did music videos like help you in learning how to direct short films?
Oh, let's see here.
Tons.
First off, getting used to 16-hour days. No, I'm kidding, but also I'm not kidding.
Timing for sure.
Yeah.
And pacing.
Pacing is a big one.
I think that's a huge thing too, because we edit like our own shorts and that, and some other projects as well. So that's something that definitely it helps having that music background, and also with music videos, because obviously everything needs to be synced to, the beat and timing, which, film, and specifically too, if you're doing like suspense or drama, there is a certain pacing that you want, like leading up, if there's something where it's a, dolly shot to the door and, something's going to come out of it, but getting the right timing for that. Cause I mean, horror films is really
that's everything.
It's sound design,
like
and
that, timing.
And timing. That's it. That's what makes a good thriller film. And then also the long days, being able to make quick decisions and think on your feet. It's a very rewarding industry, but it can be very tricky, and you need that kind of like, I'd say that kind of chutzpah.
The chutzpah. Yeah, you need the chutzpah
to really like, to make it all come together. Otherwise, it absolutely, any art industry, I feel like you can lose that passion for it if you're not careful. And that's something I always told myself growing up, was that the minute that I, lose my like love for something, that's when I know I don't want to pursue it as a career. Because that's something that I don't think is talked about enough, is your passions. When you fuse your passion and your career, it's not easy. And there's a very delicate balance there. So for me with theater, I loved it. I loved being on stage. I loved singing, acting, dancing, what have you. But the politics in that, I just wasn't really vibing with anymore. And I'm like, all right, I don't want to ever lose my love for the theater. So it's time to switch gears. And passion and all that.
I don't know.
Music videos, it's like, it was really easy for me to work in music videos because we both did music.
Yeah.
And so like timing with the beat and all that stuff. But when like after I'd left college, I did have a hard time kind of breaking into that like narrative kind of mindset. And I was really fortunate enough to work with a guy who had me turn off all the audio tracks and just watch the raw video feed with no audio. And he was like, There's a rhythm here. Like there's a beat. You have to think about it like how you hear the song. Like there's still a rhythm. And that's really what it's about. And I guess transitioning from that music video thing in editing, kind of like timing, like especially with suspense and horror, I still hear like a click track almost in my head. That's to a certain meter. So I'm like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, bam. And that's like, I don't know. It's really transferable, I think.
That's interesting. I love that. I mean, I'm sure like I've edited podcasts before, and there is certainly a rhythm to doing this, but I'm sure in movies that there is a rhythm that, it is kind of a big music video, especially when you've got a soundtrack in the background. It's just a kind of an expanded music video.
100%.
I had watched some of you guys' stuff. I think it was Trick or Treat, the one with the seance, right?
Yeah,
Nikki wrote that.
I did.
I watched it the first time without sound because it was already playing in the corner, and I was like, hold on, I haven't come back to it yet. Then turned it back on with sound, and to your point, it is quick, it's timing, the cuts are impeccable, which speaks to, like you're talking about, knowing that rhythm.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for watching that. That's really cool. I wasn't expecting
Like
that.
the most sincere compliment you could get a filmmaker is actually watching it.
Yeah, because
Well-
that was a saga that actually the first time I moved out here, because the whole series was called Creeptober,
Mhm.
and I did it more so as like recreation looks prior, and then I met this one, and I was like, hey, I started this thing called Creeptober. I don't know if you'd want to work on it with me. And I was pretty much like, well, that sounds cool as heck. Like, let's go. There's actually a photo behind us that's from the first photo series we did of it, where we did
Oh,
still
that's
images
awesome.
that told a story. And then as we kind of started doing more films together, I'm like, what if, well, actually, this was kind of you. You're like, what if we just do it? We do short films for the whole thing. And we shot all of that in like, what, 4 days?
Yeah, like 3 days, like
Yeah.
72 hours.
Very long
Wow.
day.
Yeah.
They were very long days.
I'm really happy ShareGrid has a rental policy that lets you get a weekend worth of gear for the price of one day. That makes it fantastic.
That makes it possible. I was going to ask too, who did the opening sequences? Because it looks like it's like Blender or some 3D rendering. Is that something you guys do as well?
Yeah, so we do a lot of work in Unreal Engine and in
Okay.
Blender. We've recently started doing some virtual production. So a lot of where our content is going, I think, will be somewhat in that world, not exclusively, but we have a strong backing in Unreal Engine and Blender. So I really wanted to make something that conveyed the sense of the short film series and looped every single one together. Maybe not in like a narrative sense, but in a it takes place in the same universe kind of sense.
Yeah, I definitely got that because each one you're kind of going through the credits on the floor, through the haunted house. It was super cool to watch.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if there's ever a time that you all want to talk about virtual production and how it integrates with the everyday filmmaking, we are very
Oh, that's a whole other
yeah,
conversation.
we're very nerdy in that sense. And if you can't tell, we like to talk a lot. So that is something that we're really excited about because it is such a new technology that is just like similar to Blender in the sense that like, really anyone can learn this skill.
With the ability to have like free open source programs in 3D, like it's just so cool. You can make anything possible.
Yeah, I was going to say being just a two-person team or with some other people, what are some lessons you've learned about just kind of scrappy filmmaking in addition to using these technologies? What are some things you could share with aspiring directors or someone just starting out?
Hire a sound guy.
Hire a sound guy, sure.
Don't
try
try to do everything.
Like most things, some things, but
do some like because again, you need to have those experiences.
Yeah.
But hire sound.
I would say this: don't be afraid to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Huge films with $60, $120 million budgets make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. Learn from them. It's a constant evolving process, filmmaking. New technology, new things are constantly changing the landscape and enabling independent filmmakers to do more and more things that were previously unthinkable. So with that being said, it's partially knowing what stories you want to tell and then figuring out ways of telling them that are cost effective. If you can learn a program like Unreal Engine or Blender and you can know a little bit about compositing in After Effects or how to cut your own stuff or how to score your own stuff, you're automatically at an advantage because you're not relying on others so much to create. And at least for like someone starting out who wants to like make things, you have such an insane amount of opportunity in this day and age. Oh my God, my cell phone records video 1,000 times better than my HDV cam did in 2003 or 4 or whenever that was. Like I didn't have access to this kind of stuff growing up. And as a result, I made far more inferior looking things than kids who are growing up with an iPhone that shoots in ProRes. It's
Wild.
gnarly.
Yeah, I mean, I would pretty much say the same thing. Like, don't be afraid to make mistakes, take risks. Also, even if the film doesn't come out exactly how you want, the fact that you actually did it speaks volumes.
Everyone wants to make a movie.
Yeah, but not
No one makes a
everybody
movie.
actually does it. So even if this is not the shot I wanted, I wish I would have had more time with this. Like you still did the thing. And that's really cool.
I got the question. And so horror is it's a unique genre where like, I feel like action movies and comedy movies can kind of blur together. Like, especially we've seen that in Marvel films and stuff, but I feel like horror movies are such their own thing that my question is, did the horror genre find you or did you find the horror genre?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I love this question. This is good. I want to say the horror genre found me, but that's also very...
I think there's a psychological response here with me, like some sort of Freudian thing, maybe. I just remember when I was like a little kid, like I wanted to be scared. Like I liked watching the old Universal horror movies.
Yeah, that's what I grew up on.
And as I got older, something about that just kind of stuck with me. I liked the dark. I liked the idea of something creepy lurking in the shadows. And I honestly don't know what it was that initially attracted me to that, but it's something that has stuck with me my whole life in every iteration, from slasher films to psychological horror films, which are my favorite. I don't know, something from childhood. Maybe I was scarred at an early age and I've blocked it out. And for some reason, that's the outlet it's chosen to come. But it found me, I feel like, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, growing up, like the Universal monster movies, like that was me and my dad. Like my mom's terrified of anything even. She has watched our films, though, which I was very proud of her for doing because that was big for her. But that was something at a very young age that always, was exciting to me. And then I would definitely like stay up late at night and watch the horror movies I wasn't supposed to on like a low volume so that like my parents wouldn't hear me. But there was just like, there's that sense of thrill that you like, no other genre really does that.
That's true. It's kind of like a roller coaster.
It is like a roller coaster.
Visceral, yeah.
Yeah, where your stomach, there's the butterflies and you're like, you're anxious, but it's like a good anxious. Maybe this is why we're insane people. I don't know.
Maybe horror movies just allow you to feel more easily than other genres of film. It's just like so overtly in your face with like, this is how you should feel. You should feel anxious. You should feel scared. And other genres of film maybe have a tendency to be more subtle in that conveying of emotion.
Well, which is why we also tend to gravitate towards more multi-genre films, which you're seeing a lot more of now. I feel like there was like a time in like the early, like later 2000s, like 2000, like what, like maybe like 3 to like 9, that you had a good mixture of, something wasn't necessarily just horror. Like horror has so many subgenres within it.
What is a horror film?
Right. It doesn't need to be just, I kind of like revert back to my, I was like, oh, I can't do that. It's a scary movie. I'm like, but it's really not though. I'm like, it's more of like a mystery thriller. And that's when, thrillers were really popular for a while. And certain things don't need to just fit into one genre box.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite examples of those genre bending films that you look as guideposts for you?
Ooh, that's good.
That's a good one too. You guys are you're hitting it with the.
Well,
there's so many.
I think one of the more recent films that I've seen that I thought was really cool was, and if you guys are not fans, feel free to deride, but Leave the World Behind was super cool.
Yeah.
It built dread. I felt anxious pretty much the entire movie. I felt like something terrifying was going to happen. Nothing ever did happen. And I love movies that leave me feeling completely dissatisfied. So, I mean, like in a lot of sense, it was like a psychological movie end of the world scenario, but in this other sense, it was very much a horror film. It had all the things I would expect from a horror film. It had these shots of wide open empty spaces that slowly creeped in, same kind of shots you'd see in Annabelle or The Conjuring, but it's just a different tableau. It's a different view. It's a different thing happening. So I felt like that film really, really kind of was multiple genres. It was a drama, it was a thriller, it was a horror movie, thriller, stuff like that's really cool.
Yeah.
And then there's like, overt horror movies. Like we saw Scream 6 the other night.
Yes.
I know we're late on that train, but I was like, it was pretty good. It was very much the traditional horror film, but it also, like the Scream series typically has, it had these meta elements and these comedic elements and these other parts of it that, although falling under the horror umbrella, it's like, I don't know, you can get so much more out of a film like that.
Yeah, that is one thing that the Scream franchise has always done. And even though it is put into like the like slasher box, it is so meta in a lot of and it's a lot of it's funny, especially if you follow along with it. So with Scream 6, I was pleasantly surprised. I had very, very low expectations for it, and I was proved wrong. And I think I sat on the couch. I didn't want to even say it at first, but I'm like, shit, that was good.
We saw Saltburn, Saltburn the other night too, and that was a crazy amount of genres. I also felt anxious the entire time. I don't want to spoil it, but the overall topic matter is like from an almost horror perspective.
Yeah.
And there are some really horrific moments in the film, you know? So I thought that film did a really excellent job of being multiple genres. I wouldn't really know what even to label that film as. It's not a drama. It's not entirely just a psychological piece.
It's not a horror.
No, really. It's a bunch of different things, and it's very effective.
It was a good multi-genre one.
That's like the sixth time Saltburn has come up in my life in the last 48 hours. And so I feel like I need to just push through and I need to watch it.
Yeah, you
gotta go.
It's intense. It is not for the faint of heart, but it is
what I hear.
The cinematography was really beautiful in that too.
Beautiful
color palette.
The color palette was fantastic. The blocking, like every element of it was just so well done.
I feel like with some of these genre bending films, they're polarizing because I had so many friends who hated Saltburn, and I was like, "Oh, that was a fun ride," just because it was different, right? It was different. Yeah. It was interesting, well done cinematography. I feel similarly about some of these horror-esque thriller movies that I think are trying to get people into the genre. Megan was a huge hit. Everybody loved Megan. But I feel like Jordan Peele movies, it's easy to turn someone off to, or they're a little more interested in something scary after watching them because, you know, it's a tease of what more horror I think has to offer.
Yeah.
That's interesting, especially in thinking of Jordan Peele's films. I don't think I've thought of it from that perspective, but I can see how that would be effective at bringing someone into the genre. That's interesting.
We also finally watched Pearl the other night.
Yeah, we're like leap years behind on some films and like right in the present with other ones.
Here's the thing. It's like also like when you work in film, and obviously you want to see all these films, but then sometimes, you know, if you're working a 12, 13 hour day and you have a little bit of downtime, like I'm not going to lie, there are times that we just watch like really cheesy like baking shows.
Oh yeah.
But what you would think, you're like, oh yes, the filmmakers, they must like, you know, just all the time. And I'm like, nah, sometimes
Holiday Baking Championship really starts to pick up around season 7.
Before Christmas. And
season 7. It's good. Season 9. Oh man, the drama is palpable.
Yeah.
No, I've heard that from a lot of people. I mean, honestly, one of my favorite interviews, Werner Herzog talks about how he loves WWE. He's like wrestling, the spectacle. And I was like, wait a second. So that makes sense. If you're busy with the work, you can't always dive back into the heavy films every day.
I was fortunate enough to see him speak one time, and he said that hot wiring a car is a very valuable tool for a filmmaker to have, because if there's a car blocking your shot, you got to move it somehow to get the shot you need. And I always thought that was like the funniest thing ever.
Fantastic.
I love him.
Advice to live by from Werner Herzog. Well, what have you guys been working on recently? Because I looked at your IMDb for the production company. You have a few things done already, like we've talked about. What's in editing? What's in the ideation phase? Kind of what are you guys busiest with right now?
Yeah, so right now we are editing. We're actually just finishing up a first cut of a short film that we EP'd at the end of, it's weird saying the end of last year because that was really only a month ago. But yeah, and then we have a couple of feature films that are, I guess, going into pre-production now that we're hoping to get like around either like summer or fall of this year, if not the top of next. And we've been doing a ton of writing ourselves. And
I have a film. So we have those two projects that are wildly different projects. One is
there's two features that are like,
one is like jazz and psychological thriller, film noir, and one is like sex, rockets, space, the occult. So very different things. And then I have a script that I've written that's kind of like Thelma and Louise meets Bonnie and Clyde meets Sam Peckinpah's The Getaway. It's very action, 1970s, you know, those fast punch-ins to the face, like very Machete, Death Proof kind of vibe. but the story has a lot of substance and it makes a really good point.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get this produced in the next like 2 years because it's a much bigger project in terms of budget and scope.
Yeah, the budget's going to be.
And these are all feature films, not short films.
That's awesome. And I guess when it comes to features more than shorts, I think the question in everyone's mind is always budget. Where does it come from? How do you go about that? Are you guys going and finding investors or GoFundMe pages, or how do you kind of drumming up that interest?
All of it.
It's a combination of different things. Having a good personal network to be able to do a crowdfunding campaign through like Seed and Spark is always super beneficial. But realistically, unless your network has insanely deep pockets, you're not going to raise $1 million on Seed and Spark. So, you look at finding an angel investor or someone that believes in the project that also is willing to accept the risk of losing their money, which is, a huge 95% chance.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it, you can get really creative to fill in the gaps. You can do deficit financing. You can take tax credits and get a loan against the tax credit. It depends on where you're shooting, what your state has to offer. Or if you're doing an international production, you could go to a place like Romania, which offers a 40% tax credit. And you can essentially get 40% of what you spend in Romania back at the end of production. Or take out a loan on that 40% so you have guaranteed money to kind of. So, long story short, there's multiple ways and you want to kind of do all of them to try to get the most amount of money you can. I always like to say, let's aim for the moon, shoot for the stars, and then scale back as needed.
Yeah. And like find yourself someone like him that is absolutely incredible with like a budget spreadsheet. Like it's like you made like your own breakdown for half the time. And it's just like, yeah, so he's a lot better with numbers than
having good mathematical skills isn't the worst, and knowing how to spread a dollar and save money is imperative. Like we did a feature at the beginning of 2023. We needed shots of doorknobs and things freezing over. No one could figure out how to do it. I came up with a $6 solution, which was taking a can of compressed air, flipping it upside down, spraying the doorknob, and you can watch it. It gets cold. It turns to ice.
Yeah.
Easy solution. That we don't need a special effects person to come down. We don't need pyro or anything rigging like that. It's just done. Star power is what costs money. Getting someone, that's where the budget goes, because paying crew and actually paying for the production, realistically, depending on the scope, you could probably do that for $250,000, $500,000 if you're really down to brass tacks there. But bringing like actual talent or like a star cinematographer or someone like that to set, that's going to cost you. And that's how you sell a film too. So it's kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess with that in mind, what's the goal for Eternals Productions for 5 years, 10 years out? Is it to land a big star? Is it to get, full feature released in theaters in 5 years? What's the hope there?
Yeah. Theatrical release on projects in the next short while. We're hoping to open up our own physical studio space. Once we do that, it'll make producing some of these other films logistically a little bit easier. So their budget for location will basically float that place.
Yeah.
Theatrical release of more than one film. And there are a few star talent that we are actively seeking their participation in our project.
Well, that's exciting.
Yes.
Exciting.
Yes.
I would say that, theatrical release is huge. So more, every film that we do is, we started a genre because because here's the thing, a lot of things, especially within horror, as we discussed prior, doesn't really have an area that it fits into. Like Saltburn, as a prime example, doesn't really have a set genre because it's not horror, it's not this. So we started our own genre. It's called Cinegoth.
Okay.
Maybe. It's kind of like
on the cusp of
it's on the cusp. Cinegoth did this. It's kind of like the idea of returning to more fundamentals in filmmaking, less reliance on jump scares, things like that, making really compelling story that engages with the audience. Story, no matter what the film is, if it has a good story, it's good in our minds, I guess.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't have a good story, it can have all the star talent, special effects, eye candy, amazing cinematography in the world, and it's not going to be a good film.
Reminds me of all the cheap action flicks that, a couple $1 million poured in and it's just the same formula. So
Just people punching and kicking each other.
And for the record, films like that have their place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's always like lazy Saturday morning, don't really want to engage with material. Let's put on the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. But like, like that's not what I would say is a good film by any means.
Yeah.
Well, we've heard it here first. You've called it Cinegoth. We're going to say Nikki and Alexander created it. I just read a piece last month about Yorgos Lanthimos saying like, oh, it was a gothic dark comedy. And I was like, a gothic dark comedy? So you're onto it. I mean, you're getting yourself in the space.
Now we get him to like work with Cinegoth. And like,
let's get him into the movement. Then we'll really
add on to the year goal, like,
I like that
2-3 year goal list. That seems
he must be an interesting person to like hang out with or have a conversation with. I'd imagine he's fairly fascinating.
Yeah, him, and I can't think of his name. Who directed Hereditary? Boaz Afraid?
Yeah.
Those two have just got to be either really dark or really funny.
Ari Aster's a big influence of ours for sure, and Robert Eggers.
Yep.
I think a really weird room to be in would be like Nathan Fielder, Ari Aster, Yorgos Lanthimos, and like maybe one of the Safdie brothers, which works because they're doing that show, Benny Safdie and Nathan Fielder. So it's like half the room's right there.
Right there. Add the others in, and
it would either be like a really strange, like uncomfortable room, or it would be this engaging room filled with like visionary conversation. Either way, I'd like to see it.
Either way, I'd be there. I'd show up.
That'd be cool, right?
Yeah.
Add Boots Riley, the new Variety directors on directors. Just a funky room.
Yeah, Sorry to Bother You is one of my favorite weird offbeat films I've ever seen.
Same here. I can never shut up about it. I'm like, the horse gets weird. Past that, you're going to love the movie.
Oh my God. I think that's one of the best, but it's like, it's so absurd that it works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it jumps the shark in such a way that like you still have that suspended disbelief because it's just so ridiculous and you're just in for the ride at that point.
Yeah, I saw that at the Cinedome with Boots and Lakeith and Terry Crews and Patton Oswalt. They were all there for a big Q&A. And the first question that was asked was, is this Guillermo del Toro's work? And he was like, yes. He did all the creature feature, all the props. That's all Guillermo del Toro, which was cool to hear of like people getting involved in a first-time big project.
That's cool. Guillermo del Toro is another influence.
I just want to give him a hug.
Oh, he's so great.
Yes.
He just seems like a little, like a cuddle bear, and I just want to be like, thank you.
Well, soon enough, 5 years, 10 years, you guys in Yorgos, you guys in GDT.
Yeah.
Be hanging out.
I like that.
Just a bunch of old Cinegoths.
Yeah, just a bunch of old Cinegoths hanging out on the porch.
That's the dream. Well, thank you guys again for coming on, and we'll definitely have you on again, especially before more of your films come out. You get further in the process and hearing how these features go this year, and we appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's been a blast. Yeah. Good conversation with you guys.
Thanks you
again. All right, Madison, let's catch up. It's a Friday. I've seen a couple movies I want to talk about, and I want to hear what you've been watching lately.
What have you been watching?
I saw two films that have been nominated for a bunch of awards, and they are both very depressing topics. So I saw Society of the Snow, the story of the downed rugby team and what happens there, and then I saw Zone of Interest, the story of a Auschwitz commander's family living just on the other side of the wall.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Super upbeat, compelling, lighthearted stories.
Yeah, definitely why I decided to procrastinate seeing them both. Society of the Snow was on Netflix, and I won't spoil anything about it. Here's what I'll say. Directed by J.A. Bayona, who did the second Jurassic World movie. He did an amazing job. I mean, amazing job. I was so scared to watch it because it's about this team who crash lands and is stuck from October through December up in the mountains. Everyone had given up on them, and the crash kills 15, 20 people to start. And then as time moves on, they resort to cannibalism. and they also were just trying to find a way to survive. An avalanche comes through and reburies the plane. Just everything that could go wrong has gone wrong in these boys' lives. So it's definitely a rough one, but it was done so
Wow.
beautifully. I've told everyone they have to watch it. You just have to push through. It doesn't show in graphic detail all of the cannibalism parts, which is nice.
Yeah. At the very least, they don't show the cannibalism.
Yeah, I mean, you know what they're doing because the guys are talking about there's full
Yeah.
discussions, and I watched it sub, not dubbed. Stay strong. And so you're reading the words, and oh, this is what's about to happen. And they're breaking glass from the window to have knives and shanks. And then they go behind the plane. And so the camera shows a little bit, but it doesn't really get into gross and gruesome detail. The next
Right.
thing you know, there's stuff that just looks like meat on a piece of the plane, and everyone's eating.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know about nice, but that's Society of the Snow. I tell everyone they should watch it, but be in the right mindset.
Yeah. No, my dad loves those kind of like harrowing survival stories. Like, I'm pretty sure, is this one like based on a book?
Well, it's based on one of the more recent books.
There are a number of
Yeah.
there are a number of incidences where a plane crashes in the mountains and people need to survive and they barely make it through and they have to eat each other. Like that's it's just like it's an archetypal story at this point.
It sure is. And as opposed to our cultural history of the Donner Party and, the Mormons related there, this definitely has a different feel to it. And I had to do some digging afterwards. The Catholic Church and the Pope pardoned all these boys because after they first got rescued, there was like some rumors about it. And then it broke all the major news outlets. These boys had to resort to cannibalism. That's how so many of them survived 2+ months. And then there was all the families of these boys hating them. And so they actually held a press conference in which one of the boys, the spokesperson, goes, while we were up there, we're also religious. We decided I felt like I had a prompting from Jesus Christ that we were supposed to survive off of each other's flesh like he commanded his disciples. Now,
Wow.
whether mirage, miracle, or otherwise, that was enough for the Pope to say, you're right, pardoned. Completely pardoned, everything shut up. And of course, all the media outlets and then very Christian countries down there, they all shut up. They just didn't talk about it anymore.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Damn.
Give it a watch.
So Zone of Interest.
Zone of Interest, much more lighthearted. The story of the Hoss family, HOSS, with an umlaut, so of course I can't pronounce it. He was the head of Auschwitz. And this movie is a tough one. Are you still pretty active on Twitter? X, whatever you call it?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I am.
I have to get into the discourse and see what everyone's talking about. The problem is once I do, I don't know what to think anymore.
Yeah.
So here's the issue. Most of my friends have praised this as just like the best movie of the year. I watched it with one friend. It makes you feel gross, but also I don't know if it was the best movie. I don't know. It's a story of telling everything
What made
by
it feel
showing love.
gross?
Well,
Yeah.
it's a story of telling everything by saying little. You don't see inside the camp ever. All you hear is the noises from the other side of the wall. So sound design wise, it's amazing. The kids are playing in the backyard as you hear gunshots and screaming as the billowing smoke out of the chimney is coming up.
Wow.
Mr. Haas's wife is fully into it. She loves it. She thinks her husband's amazing. He takes a meeting with a new furnace company describing how efficient their furnaces can be, and it goes into detail like a full sales meeting. So at a certain point, the director's Jewish, and so you can't be mad at him for that part. No, he's Jewish. He knows what he's doing. But at a certain point, like making it so relatable and real and just like, they're just in everyday life. They go kayaking in a river. They go do this. He's getting transferred. He really wants to be transferred back to Auschwitz. He gets transferred back to Auschwitz. His wife is so happy they don't have to leave their house. It's so beautiful with the wonderful garden. It just feels a little gross at a point of, I'll never watch it again. I'm really glad that I saw it once. But I don't know for me that it really did much past the first 20 minutes in the conceit of like, they live on the other side of the wall from Auschwitz. I don't know.
Yeah, just like, what a story. And to like, how many different ways can we revisit the horrors of what we've done to each other in ways that are productive, right? Like that's my thing. Like, certain movies just feel like horror porn or torture porn, where it's just like, I don't know what the value. Like, yeah, it's important that we tell these stories and like we don't forget what we've done to each other. Like, but like, why? Granted, I have not seen this movie, but I'm sure it would. I mean, I've been to Auschwitz, so I've been to Auschwitz and Birkenau, and just being there was enough.
Yeah, I want you to watch it at some point, and we'll talk about it at a later date. Because
Okay,
I went to
will.
Berlin, and I haven't been to the camps yet, but Berlin had the best memorial to the Holocaust because they're so self-critical and just saying this was disgusting. The scale and it was disgusting. There is no other way around it.
Yeah.
Now, this movie really humanizes and reminds everybody the head of Auschwitz could have been your next door neighbor going to Sunday dinner with you and just chumming it up, which is scary in the same way maybe The Killer by David Fincher was scary of like, oh, they could just be your neighbor. But it was just so much of it for 2 hours. It felt like 4 hours. I just don't know how productive it got.
That's interesting. Well, yeah, maybe if I'm feeling, really melancholy and macabre, I'll take a look at it.
All right, enough doom and gloom. What have you been watching? Hopefully something happier.
Yeah, I did. I watched Hero, the Jet Li film from like the early 2000s. It was a good film, beautifully, shot. Like, have you seen that one? So it's unfortunately the one that I rented was dubbed, and I was like, I'm good with the dub, but like I was expecting subtitles, but beautifully shot. So it is kind of the same martial arts, it's kind of from the same era as Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where they're floaty, they're on wires, but each fight scene has a different color palette. And so like, whether everyone's in white and the whole scenery is white, or everything's in orange and they're wearing orange or blue, and like each element of the story has just like a completely different color palette, and it's really like visually striking. The greats of of martial arts films are in there, like Donnie Yen is in there, Jet Li's in there, the guy who plays Shang-Chi's dad in Shang-Chi is in there.
Okay.
Just fantastic martial arts storytelling. It is interesting that the difference between like Western and Eastern storytelling. You definitely get that when you watch like Studio Ghibli films, but you definitely get that when you watch these like Chinese produced martial arts films. It's just like, oh, we do stories very differently here in the West, where we have well, not that obviously the movie's called Hero, so it's about heroes, but like we have a very almost predictable sort of plot structure that these other films just like don't really follow. But yeah, I thought it was really good. I think if I was more familiar with Chinese history, it might have been better. But as it was very enjoyable.
So Hero, and where did you rent it?
Yeah.
One to check out. What else did you watch?
I watched The Gentleman by Guy Ritchie.
Okay.
You seen that
your
one?
First time watching it?
No, it's my second time.
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
It was just on my list of things that I was like, I think I need to go back and watch that again.
Yeah.
And it was just so much fun, Guy Ritchie's he's a great filmmaker. I love, he did The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which I loved The Man from U.N.C.L.E., like such a great movie. But this is just it definitely didn't pass the back. Maybe it did pass the Bechdel test, but barely. But it was just about a bunch of men, in business with each other. And we love Matthew McConaughey, Colin Farrell, and Hugh Grant, and Charlie Hunnam. I thought Charlie Hunnam did a great job.
He was great.
Yeah.
Your celebrity lookalike.
Honestly, yeah. I was sitting there thinking like, should I be dressing nicer? Should I be getting a bigger beard and like wear a cardigan with a tie?
Should you be wearing checkered trousers? I think you should.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a great movie. Really super enjoyed it. Guy Ritchie's he's a fun filmmaker.
He is. Let me tell you what, I was on the hunt for a matching tracksuit like Colin Farrell. I need that. Just the fashion, the fun, Colin Farrell beating up the kids in the chippy shop or whatever, the kebab shop. Yeah. What a great scene. What a good movie.
Yeah. If you're a fan of cinema, like there's a lot in there to like, especially the way he'll set up a scene. The opening scene is Hugh Grant is telling Charlie Hunnam's character this story, and then he's talking about like he's setting it up as if it was a movie, and then like the framing changes and it goes from like grainy to clear, and like So you can tell that a lot of like care about the craft has been put into the movie. So like, well, you can enjoy it on a very light level as like, oh, this is just a fun movie. If you're like a fan of cinema and you watch this, you're like, oh, there's a lot going on here that is very good.
Yeah, it's funny. I watched this before I watched his earlier stuff. Like I watched Snatch in 2022. He's definitely a good example of someone who's like markedly improved, but kept the same essence the whole way through.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to compare him to Tarantino because they both like this kind of story, the Pulp Fiction-y, you know, multiple stories crossing up at the end. But I think he's just got a different sensibility that makes it fun.
Probably a little bit more accessible sensibility. Because as much as I love Tarantino, I think some of his films are so highbrow, in a lowbrow sort of way that they just kind of like I'm not gonna lie to you, I watch Pulp Fiction and I'm like, what? Huh?
It's not my movie to rewatch.
Yeah,
Same with Reservoir
no,
Dogs. Good. I see why everyone freaked out, but
yeah, we should do a Tarantino episode at some point where we can
we'll do a
watch it
Tarantino
all.
series. We'll go watch
Tarantino series.
again.
Yeah. No, that's
I've
a good
never
idea.
seen Jackie Brown. I don't
Neither
love
have
The
I.
Hateful Eight. There's a couple I'm like, I need to revisit and just see.
But there's some of them that are really good that I love watching.
Django is just amazing.
Anyways.
Well, we'll keep it short because I know that there's the Super Bowl for everybody to enjoy this weekend, and we've got another episode coming soon with another Masters of the Air debrief. So we will leave it there for you and watch good movies and talk again soon.
Right on.